So hello everyone. Thank you so much for registering for this workshop. We are very much happy to have you here on this platform. And thank you, Dr. Tani, for accepting our invitation for speaking about genome editing at this workshop. Dr. Tani has been a regular speaker at our events, and we are so glad to have her here again at this platform. So without taking too much of your time, I would like to go ahead and share my screen so that I can give you a very brief introduction about genomics. So just give me a moment. So I hope you're able to view my slides. Dr. Tani, can you see my slides?
Yeah, we can see your slides.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for joining in. We are Genomics. We are incubated at NSR Cell at IIM Bangalore. Soon we may be known with another name. We are upgrading ourselves, and we are therefore going to do a little bit modification in our name as well. That will be revealed very soon enough. And if you are following us on any social media, you'll be intimated over there as well. And if you are not yet following us on any of the social media platforms, please do that soon so that you will be aware of our new identity. So Genomics is a platform where we provide, or is a venture where we provide bioinformatics services, and we are developing solutions for the life science researchers and the healthcare industry. The key competencies that we have are the bioinformatics support that we provide, including the next generation sequence data analysis and the various structural bioinformatics support. We do a lot of training and events, which include workshops and webinars, and a lot of hands-on training programs, which include short and long-term training courses and dissertation projects as well. The different professional courses that we regularly conduct include NGS analysis, clinical research, structural bioinformatics. We regularly conduct programs on structural bioinformatics, on basic bioinformatics as well. So this was all about genomics, about our key competencies. If you are willing to talk, if you have any queries, or if you would like to associate with us, or you have any data sets for analysis, feel free to reach out to us on any of the social media platforms, or you can drop in a mail, or just give us a call right away. So let's introduce our speaker, Dr. Tani Agarwal, who's a researcher, is an innovator, she's an educator, and she has been very much active in clinical research and is a public health enthusiast. She's a well-trained biotechnologist with very diverse experience on bench across different research teams, and she has worked over different continents as well. She has strong skills in research, and she also has excellent analytical and communication abilities. She enjoys to work in diverse projects and which are dealing with overall mindset to improve the healthcare and the life science industry. She did her PhD from CSIR IGAB and has postdoctoral experience from Rockefeller University, New York, and NTU, Singapore as well. She has worked as assistant professor at CIC Delhi University and also at the Amity University, Gurgaon. She has also explored the private industry, where she has worked as product manager at Smart Analyst, Gurgaon as well. So welcome, Tani. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation. And Dr. Tani is going to talk about the CRISPR-Cas9 genome editing, where she's going to discuss about the basics of CRISPR-Cas9 and talk about the diversity of the Cas9 variants. She's also going to conduct a hands-on training program on designing gRNAs, the guide RNAs. There we are also going to discuss about the applications in gene therapy, drug discovery, and the next-gen transgenics as well. We'll be also touching upon the challenges and the future directions of the genome editing field as well. So with that note, I'm going to stop share my screen, and thank you so much, Dr. Tani, for accepting our invitation. I've made you a presenter. You can share your screen and share your slides now. And participants, during the course of this workshop, I would like you to focus on the lecture. So basically, we'll be having the lecture first, and which will be followed by the hands-on. If you have any questions, don't hesitate in writing in the Q&A box. You can also raise your virtual hands, and we can so that we can either unmute you, or you can write your questions in the chat box, which we can take maybe during the presentation if the time allows, or at the end of the first session or the second session. For the first session, you may not need any specific thing because it's going to be sort of a theoretical and lecture based. But for the hands-on, I would recommend you to log in from your laptop so that you can try and follow the exercises along with. If in case you are not able to do that, the recording will be shared, the recording link, the YouTube link of the recording will be shared along with your certificate within 1 week of this workshop, so that you can go through it again and try the hands-on again as well. So Tani, can you share your screen now?
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Diksha. It's always a pleasure to come on this portal and interact with young people. So guys, without wasting any further time, I would like to share my screen and let you see the slides. Please, yeah, can you see the slides now?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay then.
Just make it full screen. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So today's topic is CRISPR-Cas9 based genome editing and beyond. So let's look at the contents that we're going to discuss. First of all, we are going to have the introduction and basics. Then we look at the diversity of Cas variants. Third is the methods and the practical learning, which will be the second part of the the talk that would be done after a short break. And then the applications as well as challenges and future directions in this field. So for the introduction to this field of genome editing, I wanted to start with something very basic as to what is genomics, from genes and genomics to writing your genome. So as you know that the current era is all about genomics. That means that is the study of genomes, or what lies in your genome is basically the sequence of your DNA and RNA, particularly DNA first. So nowadays there is more and more talk and more effort of the scientists going towards developing something called as personalized medicine or precision medicine. So for that, what is happening is, first your entire genome can be sequenced through next gen sequencing techniques, and once the sequence is known, we can as scientists manipulate with these sequences and do desired changes, by which is called as by way of genome editing, and we can arrive at desired sequences and isogenic cell lines, and thereby develop new age therapeutics and diagnostics for better personalized medicine and care. So for this particular aspect of translational genomics, which is called as translational genomics, we can do it via three different methods. First of all, if we wanted to understand the organization of genetic networks and their contribution to cellular and organismal phenotypes, we could do it by the generation of knockouts. We will see further what are they, or knock-ins, to understand the heritable variations and their associations with health and disease. And finally, to translate genome-based knowledge into health benefits via something called as gene therapy. So all these become aspects of personalized medicine. So gene editing tool or genome editing tools, these words are used interchangeably. So these tools can be classified into two groups. One is the non-nuclease based and the other is nuclease based. Today we are going to focus on the nuclease based genome editing tools, and particularly so CRISPR-Cas9. The other 3-4 methods, which are meganucleases, TALENs, or ZFNs, we are not going to talk about these. If you were interested to know about it, maybe we can arrange another session, because like earlier, we have had a short course on genome editing where we have gone through all these things in detail. But today's focus is going to be only on the CRISPR-Cas9 based genome editing. So what exactly is CRISPR-Cas system? So basically, this is an adaptive immunity in bacteria. That means it is not something new. It has been existing in the natural systems in bacteria ever since. And how it works is that if you imagine this whole the circular kind of a thing as a bacterial cell, and on the surface of it there is a virus which is attacking it. What it is doing is it is injecting its genetic material inside the bacterial cell. Let me just have a pointer. Yeah, so it is injecting its genetic material inside the bacterial cell, and whereby the sequence of the bacterial the viral gene, viral DNA is read in terms of this PAM, which is the protospacer element called as PAM, which is pink colored, it is recognized, and once it is recognized, it can get incorporated into the repertoire of novel spacer RNAs inside the bacterial cell. Like the way in humans have an immunity that once a particular infection happens, you have antibodies raised against it, and they stay in your body system throughout your life, so that whenever the next infection occurs, the antibodies get activated and you are saved from the second infection. So similarly, this is a part of adaptive immunity in bacteria, whereby with every infection, this repertoire of the CRISPR RNAs will keep on growing. And when the second when this is processed, these spacer RNAs are processed, they combine with the Cas protein, which is a part of the bacterial machinery, and by combining, it can attack on the viral DNA and chop it down so that it will not infect the organism. Now, it may be very less clear right now, but as we go through the next few slides, it will become more clear. Now, before I begin with the whole journey of CRISPR-Cas9 studies, I wanted to introduce some of the important terms and give you clear definitions of these. So the first one is tracer RNA, which is a part of the bacterial host RNA. As you can see in terms of sequence, I've given this example. So the red part of the RNA, it is called as the tracer RNA. It is part of the bacterial host RNA. Then comes crRNA or the CRISPR RNA. It is also a part of the bacterial host RNA, but it is matching with the viral sequence. So it is called as a CRISPR RNA. So there can be several different sequences of CRISPR RNA, several unique, I could say, sequences of CRISPR RNA which are present in the bacteria. Then comes the term called as gRNA or the guide RNA, which is basically nothing but a combination of tracer RNA and CRISPR RNA, both combined into a single molecule. Oftentimes, see, I've shown you this is the CRISPR, the guide RNA, whereby it is linked through a linker RNA, right? So it is a single guide RNA molecule. At times, it is also called as sgRNA, which is same as guide RNA. SG refers to single guide RNA, single molecule. Then I wanted to tell you about PAM sequence. PAM is protospacer adjacent motif. These are special sequences, 3 to 6 nucleotide long, which are pertaining to a particular kind of Cas variant. So this sequence is also present on the host only, but this sequence is read by the Cas variant enzyme, and only when there is a perfect match will the cutting of the chopping of the viral DNA will happen or not. Then comes Cas genes. Cas refers to CRISPR associated genes or proteins. These are basically the proteins which are going to do all the cutting activity which is required for editing. Okay, so the molecular scissor here is the Cas9 protein. Oh, sorry, not just Cas9 or the Cas protein, the whole family of Cas proteins. It will become more clear as the organization is shown here. So in this slide, you can see that CRISPR-Cas9 is a naturally occurring bacterial defense system. CRISPR refers to clustered, regularly interspaced, short palindromic repeats. So what happens is during the first infection, when a bacteria is attacked by a virus injects its DNA, which is red in color, as you can see. It is associated with the Cas proteins of the bacterial host, and then it takes it towards the locus, whereby it can get incorporated into the CRISPR locus or the CRISPR site inside the bacterial host, and thereby this can add as a part of the repertoire of the DNA fragments. So the foreign fragment acquired by the CRISPR locus, it travels to the CRISPR locus and it is added here. And right near this, you can see there is a tracer RNA sequence which is gray in color. Then there is Cas9, which is blue, Cas1, 2, 3. There could be any different variants of Cas which are associated here, Cas associated genes. And now, once this red thing has become a part of the bacterial host DNA, when the second infection from the same similar virus happens, it injects this red kind of foreign DNA again. It is immediately recognized by the Cas machinery, and the tracer RNA and Cas, they they form a complex, and the complex is able to recognize this foreign DNA and disintegrate or cleave this foreign DNA, and thereby bacteria gets resistance against this virus. This is what is the entire flow which is happening. Now, I just wanted to take a moment to give you a little bit more introduction about PAM, which is protospacer adjacent motif sequences. Sometimes it can get confusing for students that why PAM sequences are important at all. So PAM sequence, you can say that it is like a recognition token, that is the last check before the chopping down due to the Cas9 activity can happen. So these are short DNA sequences which are usually 2 to 6 base pairs long, and they follow the DNA region targeted for cleavage by the CRISPR system, such as the CRISPR-Cas9. PAM is required for a Cas nuclease to cut. So the Cas nuclease will kind of have a last bit of interaction with the PAM site to understand whether this is the correct site for cutting or not. And only when the PAM site is present, it can carry out its own activity of chopping down. It is generally found 3 to 4 nucleotides downstream from the cut site. Mind you, it is generally found downstream from the cut site. And many times, for example, in the case of Cas9 nuclease, which is the most common Cas, which is derived from S. pyogenes, it recognizes a PAM sequence of NGG, which is found directly downstream of the target sequence in the genomic DNA on the non-target strand. See, so every PAM sequence will have cognizance with the corresponding Cas variant, and according to the recognition between the Cas variant and the PAM site, the cutting will happen or not. Right. So here I have given you in this table some examples of common PAM sequences and the Cas variants or the species from which the Cas enzyme has been derived. So from Streptococcus pyogenes (SP), which is the source of the Cas9 protein, there the PAM sequence is NGG, and similarly for Staph aureus it is NGRRT, and likewise different Cas and PAM sequences are known. Then to tell you about what is Cas9, which is a protein, which is CRISPR associated protein 9. It is an RNA guided DNA endonuclease. That means it is guided by RNA, but it is acting on DNA endonuclease. It is acting as a DNA endonuclease enzyme. It is associated with CRISPR, and it plays an important role in adaptive immunity system found in bacteria, Streptococcus pyogenes. It is involved in type 2 CRISPR mechanism. I'll tell you what is type 2 CRISPR mechanism in few slides to go. But mind you that Cas9 is a typical example of a Cas protein type 2 CRISPR mechanism. Now, we have imagined CRISPR and Cas9 in a way, but in real, this is how the system looks like. This is, as you can see, this DNA molecule is clouded by the Cas9 components, and this is how it looks. Now, Cas9 can be of two types, basically, for lab purposes. The natural Cas9 can be mutated into its mutant version, also called as Cas9 nickase or Cas9N, whereas the wild type is the natural type. So Cas9 wild type, unless otherwise mentioned about nickase or something, in general, whenever we are talking about Cas9, it means the wild type only. So it induces a double strand break and only requires single guide RNA. There are concerns about off-target specificity in the case of Cas9 and high efficiency of cleavage, especially good for random indels. random, insertions and deletions, or you could say knockouts. Now, whereas in the case of Cas9 nickase, it only nicks in a single strand. So therefore, it requires 2 guide RNAs for reasonable activity. There is reduced likelihood of off-target events and guide efficiency dictated by efficiency of the weakest guide RNA. So there are certain differences in the activity, most importantly it being that it only cleaves on a single strand. Now, with all that basic information about CRISPR, Cas9, PAM sequences, I just wanted to give you a good look at the organization of the entire machinery or the entire complex. So as you can see, these 2 big globules, these are basically globules or components of the Cas9 protein. And the target DNA or the genomic DNA is shown in red in color, whereas a target sequence is shown complementary to the guide RNA. And this guide RNA is the whole molecule, which comprises of 2 parts, which is the CRISPR RNA as well as the tracer RNA. So altogether, it forms one guide RNA scaffold. And as you can see on the opposite strand, the PAM sequence is also indicated. And nearby, there are 2 scissors, as in these would be the sides of the cut. So I think with this, the entire complex or the organization of the CRISPR-Cas9 complex must be clear to you. Now, how does this work? So I'm going to play this short video. Yeah.
Helps you work more efficiently, which makes accomplishing your work goals easier.
I keep hearing that CRISPR is going to revolutionize medicine, the way we fight disease, cure cancer, and maybe even create new humans. And I agree with that. But I haven't been able to find great videos out there that explain what CRISPR is. They tend to be too complex or too simple. So I thought I'd throw another video into the mix. I proudly present. Like most things in molecular biology, CRISPR was first identified in E. coli. And if we break apart the acronym, it stands for Clustered Regularly Interspaced Short Palindromic Repeats. Now that's a mouthful, but it does tell you the 2 main parts found in CRISPR. First of all, we have the repeats. These are going to be short segments of DNA, so 20 to 40 letters in length, and they're going to be palindromes. Remember, a palindrome is a sequence of letters that read the same left to right, like never, odd, or even. So we're going to have these letters that are palindrome. The reason why is that when you transcribe that DNA, you make RNA that forms these little hairpin turns. So we've got the repeats. Those are all identical, one after another, after another, after another, but they're interspaced. And so what's in the middle, we're going to have what's called spacer DNA. Now, what's interesting about the spacer DNA is that it's not identical. Each segment of spacer DNA is going to be unique. And this puzzled scientists when they identified this back in the 80s and 90s. But in the 2000s, what they found is that that spacer DNA, that's the important DNA, matches up perfectly with viral, especially bacteriophage DNA. They also identified a number of genes associated with CRISPR. So these are the CRISPR-associated or Cas genes. Now those Cas genes will make Cas proteins. The Cas proteins in general are going to be helicases. Those are proteins that unwind DNA. And then nucleases, those that cut the DNA. And so the idea was perhaps this is an immune system for bacteria, a way they could fight their old nemesis, the bacteriophage. That's exactly what's going on. So if we have a picture of E. coli, this would be the cell membrane, cell wall right here. This would be the genome of the bacteria. I'm highlighting the Cas and the CRISPR system. And so when the bacteriophage injects its DNA, what normally would happen if you don't have an immune system is this DNA would hijack the cell. It could become embedded in the genome, but more importantly, it would make a bunch of these bacteriophages and eventually kill the cell. But since it has this CRISPR system, what it's going to do is it's going to transcribe and translate proteins, so this Cas complex, and it's also going to transcribe that DNA to make what's called CRISPR RNA. And it'll fit right into this protein like this. What is this? It's a way to fight that viral DNA. It essentially breaks it apart. And so before the infection starts, the infection essentially has ended. Now you might say that's interesting, but what happens if it's injecting DNA where we don't have a spacer that matches? Well, the CRISPR-Cas system works there as well. It's going to create a different class of protein, a class 1 Cas protein. And what that'll do is it takes the DNA in, it breaks it apart, but more importantly, it takes that DNA and copies it into the CRISPR system. So what is CRISPR? It is spacer, repeat, but the spacers are essentially history of old infections so we won't be infected again. This is exactly the way your immune system works on a much larger level. You're making antibodies and then you have white blood cells that'll envelop that invader. But what scientists thought is if we could hijack this CRISPR system, we could perhaps use it, because this is a living cell here, to either inactivate genes or maybe even embed new genes. And so the search was on. And the one that you'll hear most about is the CRISPR-Cas9 system. This was identified in the labs of Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier. And what she was working on was Streptococcus pyogenes and their Cas CRISPR system. And what's interesting about it is that they only had one Cas protein. We call that Cas9. Now, it doesn't look like this, it looks like this. But if we look at its major structure, it has a nuclease. So it's got this section right here where it can cut DNA here, and it can cut DNA here as well. In S. pyogenes, they also are creating two long strips of RNA. We have the CRISPR RNA. CRISPR RNA is going to fit into the Cas, but they also have what's called tracer RNA. So if we look at what that looks like in this bacteria, you've got the spacer segment. That's going to be the part that matches up with the corresponding viral DNA. You have this tracer RNA that essentially holds the CRISPR RNA in place. And then this whole thing together forms this complex where we can break DNA. But what the lab thought is, wouldn't it be cool if we could modify this whole system? Use the one Cas9 protein, but let's put our own sequence of DNA right here. And then if we could somehow connect these two together, we'd have a really simple system. And that's what they did. They created the tracer RNA, CRISPR RNA, chimera. And so what's a chimera? It's this ancient mythological beast that's a combination of all these different species. And so what they've done is created a new type of RNA. They've got a system that's really simple. It's got two parts in it. You've got the Cas9 protein, and then you've got this chimera. And since we're making this simpler, let's just call this the guide RNA. These are the two parts of a CRISPR-Cas9 system. This is going to be the CRISPR part. It's going to be the RNA that's got the information of where we want to cut. And then we've got the protein that's actually going to do the cutting. And this is what happens. And so if we've got a little bit of DNA, so this is the DNA that we want to cut, we create a guide RNA that's going to have a corresponding bit of RNA. What happens is the DNA will feed into it like that. Once it's in place, we're going to cut it right here, and we're going to cut it right here. And so we do this little snip, and now we have an inactivated gene. We've broken the gene. Now the cell will try to fix it. It'll do some insertions and deletions, creates mutations. But what we can do a lot of the time is we can inactivate that gene. That's what the bacteria are going to do. But since we've created it, we can cut the DNA wherever we want to cut the DNA. We essentially just have to know what is the sequence of DNA that we want to cut, put that into the guide RNA, and then we can cut it. Now, let's say we want to make this more complex. Not only do we want to break a gene, but let's say we want to insert a new gene. Well, now the system's going to just have three parts. We've got the Cas9, we've got the guide RNA, and then we've got the host RNA that we want to put in. So as we break the DNA, the host DNA is going to be added, and then the DNA is going to fix it. So essentially, we've added the gene to the cell. Now, what's cool about the CRISPR-Cas9 system is it does this in living cells, and it can cut the DNA in multiple different places. So how could we use this? Well, let's say somebody has cystic fibrosis. What we could do is use a system like this to fix the genes in that person. Or in the future, we could engineer a new embryo. You can kind of see where this is going. But more importantly, I hope you know what a CRISPR system is. In review, a CRISPR system is an immune system that was identified in bacteria and then modified in humans. And I hope that was helpful.
Yeah. So I think that was quite informative video. And just building upon that, now we have seen that how the cutting happens. Let's also just go through it step by step how it is done in the lab now. So CRISPR genome engineering technology enables scientists to easily and precisely edit the DNA of any genome. So when the complex is delivered inside the cell, the guide RNA will bind to the target genomic site through complementary base pairing, meaning A pairs with T and G's pair with C, which is very simple to understand. Now, in this process, the guide RNA helps to bring in the Cas9 to the target site to make a cut to the DNA double helix, like this. It is going to make a, So, yeah, like this. So first there will be complementary targeting, and it will bring in the Cas9 here to do the cutting. Then the cell's natural DNA repair mechanism will close this gap, but because the process is not perfect, a few DNA bases will be added or deleted. Now, once the cut has been made, it is up to the cell's natural machinery, repair machinery, to take over and do the repair. Now, this repair, because it is random, thereby some bases can be either deleted or they can be added, new bases. But this is something which is absolutely random, and you cannot guess that before the steps have been done. But what will actually happen in the end of this is that the gene will be rendered non-functional. So that is for sure. So if you just wanted to inactivate a particular gene or do a knockout, this would be your preferred mechanism, that it renders the original gene, which is probably a variant linked to cancer or HIV infection. You are going to render this non-functional. This is non-precise. Then there is another mechanism whereby the CRISPR can also be used to replace an undesired version of a gene. For example, there is a person, let's assume a clinical example in which a particular person has a genetic disorder whereby a particular gene called as X is missing, and you wanted to replace that X gene into their system. So what could be done? By CRISPR-Cas9 based editing, the cut at the desired site could be introduced through the Cas9, and then a donor DNA, which you've also seen as a part of the video, that a small a short stretch of the sequence of the DNA of the desired gene can be also added into the cell as part of the study, and then that part will get inserted into this cut site, and the complementary strand of that one will be generated through the cell's natural DNA repair mechanism. In this case, the desired version of the target gene can be placed into the cell along with the guide RNA and Cas9. The cell will then use this alternate sequence as a template to repair the broken DNA through the process of homologous recombination, copying this new sequence into the genome. Fine. So this is what is going to happen. So I'm sorry, this slide has somewhere, just gotten in between. This should not have been here. Now, how it is done, I've shown you all these 4 steps, how it is done. To talk about the same thing in the form of a picture, just look at this pink colored thing as the Cas9 enzyme, and the blue colored DNA being the target DNA, and this green colored sequence of the sgRNA or the single guide RNA molecule. As you can see, right upstream to this PAM site NGG, the cuts have been introduced, and these cuts can be repaired by 2 different mechanisms. One is NHEJ. This is a typo. It should have been NHEJ. NHEJ stands for non-homologous end joining, which is a random method of repair whereby some bases get deleted or inserted, called as insertion or deletion, and this happens in a random manner. This is how the cell is repaired. Whereas when there could be another way whereby you could control from the outside how this repair has to occur. So you also introduce a donor DNA here, and in the cut which is produced over here, this donor DNA will be used as the template by the cell's machinery to repair this cut, and thus this part, which is purple in color, which is the intended donor site, this can get incorporated into this original DNA, and a new DNA molecule can be produced. This is called as homologous recombination, or homology directed repair, that is HDR. Now, just to give you more clarity on the same thing, very simple, just to elaborate on this. So if you imagine that there is a small double-stranded break which has happened, a double-stranded break which has happened here in the double-stranded DNA, homologous recombination, or HDR, what it will do, it will use this kind of a third molecule, which is purple in color over here, and it will use this as a template to repair this double strand break, and that's how this whole purple thing gets incorporated as a part of this funnel. Whereas in non-homologous end joining, this kind of repair is random, and few bases can be lost or randomly edited here. So this gives rise to frame shifts or indels. Indels refers to insertions and deletions. Whereas in the case of homologous recombination, you are able to generate site-specific mutagenesis, which is precisely where the mutation has been happening, or you can control where to have the mutation inserted. Now, with all these basics, you must be wondering about the diversity of CRISPR-Cas systems in bacterial immunity. So CRISPR-Cas9 systems are basically classified into two classes, class 1 and class 2. Class 1 has type 1 and type 3. Basically, these classes are dependent on the type of Cas variants that are being used. So in type 1, Cas3 is used, and type 3, Cas10 is used. So what happens is they use several Cas proteins and CRISPR RNA. That means there is a multi-component protein which is present in this kind of a mechanism, whereas class 2 has type 2 and type 5, which is using Cas9 or CPF1. These employ a large single component Cas9 protein is used in conjunction with CRISPR RNA and tracer RNA, as you can see here. So whether it could be formation of type 2 CRISPR system that has been shown here. Now, like I have told you earlier, there are two variants of the Cas9 nuclease. Actually, I wanted to tell you about three types of variants. There is another third variant. So the first one being the wild type Cas9, which produces double strand breaks, and it causes insertions and deletions, and it is a precise replacement mutations. Then there was this Cas9D10A. That means there is a single mutation in this, and it cleaves only one strand. It has got only nickase activity. So it is same as Cas9N, which we have studied earlier. Then comes a third variant, which is dCas9. D refers to deficient Cas9. What is it deficient in? It is deficient in the nuclease activity. That means this Cas9 is not able to cleave any strand. Then what is it doing? If it is not cleaving, then what is the use of this enzyme? So this enzyme is, you are harnessing the activity of the complementarity and the targeting activity of this enzyme is being harnessed, and that's how it inactivates the cleavage activity but does not prevent DNA binding. So when you want to have a gene silencing or activation tool, that means you only require Cas9 to target a particular site on the genome. You can use this dCas9 because it is not going to cut that thing. But if you wanted to take some transcription factor onto that particular site, it could do that. Now, diversity of Cas variants. As we have seen that there are class 1 and class 2 kinds of Cas mechanisms, of CRISPR-Cas mechanisms. I would like to show you a small table whereby I have tried to put some information about the different Cas proteins, but the most important ones are the ones highlighted in red: Cas3, Cas9, Cas10. These are all Cas family proteins, and their distribution is slightly different. And Cas type 1 signature is Cas3, whereby the processes target interference. It has DNA helicase as well as endonuclease activity. Others are having different activity, not necessarily for cleavage activity. Then Cas9 and Cas10 both are type 2 signatures, and they have target interference activity or CRISPR RNA expression and interference activity. So they target the different domains, and depending on their recognition of the PAM site, their PAM site recognition is also different. So this whole family of Cas proteins is already known. The versatile nature of CRISPR-Cas9 technology. So as you can see that we have already read about indels, creation of indels through Cas9, then insertion or replacement, whereby you can, knock in any kind of, genomic fragment there. Then if you wanted to do a large deletion or rearrangement, you could use a combination of two different CRISPR-Cas9 systems and increase, the efficiency of your CRISPR-Cas9 tool. And similarly, when you could use the dCas9 here by attaching some kind of a activation domain or a transcription factor onto the dCas9, which will go and target this particular site of the target DNA, and thereby, because it is attached to some kind of activation domain or some transcription factor, it can increase the gene transcription here and it could cause gene activation. Then similarly, the dCas9 can also be attached to some kind of an effector chromatin, like for example some chromatin or DNA modification you wanted to do, some kind of methylation or acetylation was required. You could take it, bind it to the dCas9, and the dCas9 would go and bind to the cognate DNA on the target sequence and thereby bring in the required activity. Similarly, EGFP based marking of your particular DNA can be done when you wanted to do localization studies or something like that. So the CRISPR-Cas9 is basically a biotechnological tool which is in the hands of scientists to do any kind of molecular manipulations and do their studies as required. Now there is another variant of new version of Cas9, which I had talked in the previous slide, which is called as CPF1, which is CRISPR from Prevotella and Francisella 1. So this is from a different source altogether. It was discovered at Broad Institute of MIT and Harvard, Cambridge. So CRISPR CPF1 is a class 2 CRISPR system, similar to Cas9. But what is the difference? CPF1 is a CRISPR associated 2-component RNA programmable DNA nuclease. It does not require tracer RNA, and the gene of this CPF1 is also much smaller. It is 1 kb smaller. Because the gene is smaller, the protein size is also smaller. So the targeted DNA is cleaved at a 5 nucleotide staggered cut. Now, mind you, there you were getting a blunt cut. Here you will get a staggered cut distal to a 5' T-rich PAM. So what we have studied, the protein is smaller. It does not require tracer RNA. It produces a staggered cut, and the PAM site is 5' T-rich PAM. It exhibits robust nucleus activity in human cells. Now, this is also one important thing, that it is able to show a lot of good activity inside human cells. Some Cas variants may not show efficient activity in human cells, but this one does. So, as a tool for biotechnology, CPF1 seems to be a good choice. Now, you can see it here. CPF1 makes staggered cuts at 5' distal end from the PAM. This is the PAM site, and it is producing a staggered cut. Fine. And this is how the shape of the enzyme is also different, just to show you that it is a different enzyme and it is much smaller in size. And that's how genome editing is a more efficient results you will get when you are using CPF1. So now this is a comparison between the genomic organization of 2 CRISPR loci found in Francisella novicida. The domain architecture of FN-Cas9 and FN-CPS1 are compared. So as you can see, the sizes, this is only 1300 amino acids and this is 1600 amino acids. So roughly there is this size variation, and the different domains are also differently organized here. Okay, this is just for information purpose. Then coming to the advantages and pitfalls, what makes CRISPR system the ideal genome engineering technology? There are key enabling attributes to become next big drug class, whereas it has also got the broadest potential to modulate genes. It has high potency and specificity, broad applicability into both in vivo and ex vivo applications, and simple editing tools. Like all you need is just a guide RNA plus a protein. They allow unprecedented ability to scale and optimize at speed and potential one-time curative treatment. When it comes to something like gene therapy, it is also important that if you were to, in concept, if you were to design a gene therapy, it would be important if it is one-time treatment only. You don't have to do it repeatedly over the lifespan of a person. It would be good if it is solved once and for all. Then ability to address any site in the genome or foreign genomes, ability to target multiple DNA sites simultaneously, and multifunctional programmability. That means you could delete, insert, or repair genes, whatever is required. But there are some pitfalls of this. That first and the biggest pitfall happens to be off-target activity or off-target indels. Then limited choice of PAM sequences. Now, this is also a very technical kind of a point where the PAM sequence is very important. So if the cognate PAM sequence is not present in your target region, you will not be able to use this technology. For example, you chose a region of interest in your genome and it did not have the required PAM site or nearby PAM site in that sequence, you will not be able to utilize this technology there. So there is limited choice of PAM sequences. So off-target activities, then delivery to cells in humans is also important, and intra and intrachromosomal rearrangements and variable DNA cleavage efficiencies. This is also observed. So with all these problems, there can be, scientists have arrived at some solutions to overcome some of these problems. So proper selection of guide RNA is very, very important. So this is one of the most important steps. And today we will also learn through hands-on training about how to do design guide RNAs ourselves. Then use dCas9 version of Cas9 protein. Now, this is important that you can use dCas9 version of Cas9 protein and you can target the target sequence or your choice, gene of interest through dCas9 version. Without having to cut it, you can either silence it or you can just, make it overactive. Then make sure that there is no mismatch within the seed sequence. First 12 nucleotides adjacent to the PAM. There should be no mismatch. Then use smaller guide RNAs of 17 nucleotides instead of 20. Sequence the organism first you want to work with and use NHEJ inhibitor in order to boost up HDR. So there are some chemicals which work as inhibitors of NHEJ, which will drive the system towards your HDR. So this is how you can improve the efficiency of HDR by adding an inhibitor of NHEJ. So chances are more that HDR will happen. Talking of applications, it is CRISPR-Cas9 technology is widely used in gene sequencing, DNA-free CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing, homology-directed repair, then CRISPR-A and CRISPR-I, which I have already told you, which is transient gene silencing or transcriptional repression or transient activation of endogenous genes. Embryonic stem cell and transgenic animals can be raised and pooled genome scale knockout screening can be done. There are a lot of clinical applications of CRISPR which can be seen in HIV, cancer, genetic diseases, or transplantation, all via the modes of gene editing. Then implications are wide implications in genome-wide screening. You could generate knockout libraries whereby you could understand the exact function of each gene. Loss of function and gain of function screens can be done. Genome editing can be done. Then ecological applications, engineering plant genomes or development of stress-resistant crops. This can be done by CRISPR-Cas9. Then repurposing of dCas9. You can use it for, laboratory. You can use it as a laboratory tool in order to understand the phenomena inside the lab. So like CASFISH, which is for imaging genomic loci, and NCHIP or CRISPR display, which can all be used as tools, biotechnological tools, molecular tools for molecular biology studies. Then transcriptional regulation, which is repression, activation, and epigenetic modifications. All these we have seen already. And then therapeutic applications, like for example, in the case of gene therapy, CFTR, which is the faulty gene in the case of cystic fibrosis. This can be replaced, or antiviral defense, or drug discovery and personalized medicine. So with all these wide implications, CRISPR-Cas9 can be a wonderful tool. Then there are widespread applications in agriculture per se, which can be used to create high degree of genetic variability at precise loci in the genome of crop plants. Potential tool for multiplexed reversed and forward genetic studies. Precise transgene integration at specific loci, developing abiotic and abiotic resistant traits in crop plants. Potential tool for developing virus-resistant crop varieties. Can be used to eradicate unwanted species like herbicide-resistant weeds, etc. And potential tool for improving polyplied crops like potato and wheat. So all these applications are very widespread. I mean, it depends upon the creativity of the scientists to, think of several different ways and means how this technology or this tool can be used to arrive at desirable results. So some of the examples of crops which have been modified with CRISPR technology: rice, corn, sorghum, wheat, potato, soybean, etc. They have been used, and different, literature studies which have been showing these studies have been seen. Now, very important part of all these, genomic editing and gene manipulation is the ethical concerns, which will always come to your mind, or at least they should come to your mind whenever you're thinking of gene editing or genome manipulation. So non-therapeutic use or enhancement. So there are certain regulatory bodies like International Summit on Human Gene Editing or the NASNAM meeting, etc. These global meetings have held, and there have been certain regulations that have been issued after these meetings to, watch that unethical use of this technology should not be done, or like, for example, any kind of manipulation with human embryos is still not allowed under the ethical purview. So these kind of these regulatory bodies are in place, and there are some Oviedo Convention on Human Rights and Biomedicine. So there are some rules and guidelines which have been issued through which there is a attempt to regulate only ethical use of this powerful technology, because it is also important that we use our the strength of this technology responsibly, right? Then there are regulatory challenges. Somatic cell therapies are only allowed. CRISPR-Cas based gene editing of somatic cell therapies will use in vivo or ex vivo strategies. So certain regulatory challenges are also there, which, if you're interested, you can read more about these. There are some books and books which have been published about the regulatory challenges being faced by any kind of cell therapy or gene therapy. Then future directions. The future of CRISPR-Cas9 is very bright. Ultimate goal would be towards human gene therapy, whereas on the way, while we go towards human gene therapy, there will be several other milestones also which can be covered, which could be something like screens for drug target identification, or improving agriculture, that is agricultural crops or agricultural animals. Then synthetic biology, pathway engineering, or programmable RNA targeting. At the same time, it would be important to have ecological vector control, that is mosquito sterilization, etc., and viral gene disruption or pathogen gene disruption. That is, for example, for any kind of viral diseases, this could be used. And multiplex genome editing targeting multiple sites. So the future is very bright. A lot of research is going on, and every day some new research papers are being added, and a lot of good research is happening, involving improving human lives through improved healthcare, improved diagnostics. Nowadays it is being used in diagnostics also, or like if you have seen in the case of SARS-CoV-2, there has been some kits which have been, some diagnostic kits which have been developed using this kind of a technology. So the uses are as diverse as possible. And the future direction of clinical development, CRISPR-Cas9 based gene editing of cells and tissues will be an exciting and rapid area of development in the coming years, and flexible approach to regulatory pathways is essential. Long-term efficacy and safety will demonstrate the value of this technology and demonstrate its potential to treat complex and challenging diseases. With great power comes great responsibility, as said by Spider-Man. Lastly, I just wanted to touch upon the patent dispute, which you will often hear about this CRISPR-Cas9 technology, that there are two big groups of scientists. One is headed by Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier, and the other is led by Zhang Feng. These both are US-based groups, and there is a raging patent war between the two groups as to who should be granted the patent for this particular technology. And once this patent dispute is settled, only then we can see some marketable therapies coming out of it. Because unless that dispute is settled, no company, no investor is going to intervene between them and suffer a lot of demurrage, etc. So that's why there is a raging patent war. It has to be settled soon. Now, in the past year, that is 2020, recently, these two scientists, Jennifer Doudna and Emmanuel Charpentier, both these women have been awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry in 2020 for the development of a method for genome editing, which is, by the way, the CRISPR-Cas9 or the genetic scissors. So just to give you a glimpse into the future, as to like currently you have a barber shop, tomorrow you might just imagine having a CRISPR barber shop where everyone comes with their set of problems, like this person has obesity, the other has cancer, the other has AIDS, and somebody has Alzheimer's. They come to the barber or the scientist which has a CRISPR-Cas9 based tool, and they can give them different hairstyles. Like a barber, they can give them different kind of treatments, and this is how this service has been charged also. Multiple diseases and disorders can be tackled, but this is just a cartoonic representation of the future. So yeah, with all that, we have a lot of interesting things coming up, and then some software and databases like AdGene, Gecko, eCrisp, CRISPR Direct, CasFinder. They are assisting CRISPR-Cas based technology and applications in the lab every day. So thank you so much, guys, for listening patiently. Please let me know if you have questions, and after this session we'll have a short break of about 2 minutes before we begin the next part, which is the hands-on training. So if you have any questions, please ask me now.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Tani, for this wonderful session. It was really educating, and I'm sure that our participants have also understood a lot of things about CRISPR. If you have any questions, you can write them in the Q&A box, because I don't see any questions as of for now. And if you don't have them now, maybe we can take a break for 5 minutes. Okay, so now we have a question. So is it possible to create designer babies using CRISPR technology, right? Like
Yes.
we can see those particular characters for our children.
Yes, by concept, yes, you can do that. Exactly, that's what was talked about, but that is not allowed because of the ethical, regulations right now. So any kind of manipulation with human embryos is not allowed. But yes, in concept, it can be done.
Yeah, so maybe in the future we can do that, but at least not now. So yeah. So if we don't have any more questions, so let's give 5 minutes break to our speaker so she can take some rest, have water, and join us back maybe by 5 minutes past 4. Is that okay, Tani? Or
Yeah, that's fine.
so, and if you have any questions, please you can share them in the chat box, and we'll take them maybe at the beginning or towards the end of the second session. So is there anything that they should be prepared for the second session, Dr. Tani?
Yeah, they should be prepared with their laptop or something which has multiple tabs they can operate, and they should have a steady internet connection to be able to use this next session properly. So that's the requirement. Okay.
So we'll be visiting a lot of websites and trying to predict the guide RNAs and design them. Is that likely, right?
Yeah.
That is what, yeah. So for that, you may have to log into different, or you should say you have to open a lot of newer websites or databases. So you please switch on your laptops or your tabs, or if you can do that on mobile also, that would also be okay. So let's have a break for 5 minutes and let's join back at 5 minutes past 4. Okay then. So thank you so much, everyone, for uh, letting our speaker take a small break. I hope you are back, Dr. Tani.
Yes, I'm here. Thank
Great.
you so much.
So we have another question from a participant. So participant says that a couple of years ago, a Chinese scientist produced genetically altered babies. Was this done with CRISPR?
Okay, so I am not aware about this thing being done. Actually, any of the research with human embryos is unethical. So I am sure nothing about this would have been published in the public domain. So I have no clue about this one. So because it is unethical, nothing would have been published, and that's why it was banned. So can't say that. However, this technology CRISPR-Cas9 is also fairly new since this has come out in the last 1 decade only. So I doubt this technology would have been already applied in humans already. So I doubt that.
Okay, so are we going to have some lecture, or we are straight away proceeding towards our hands-on?
Yeah, so we'll be starting with our hands-on training, and if everyone's ready, I can start showing you my slides about guide RNA design.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Okay, so first of all, I would like to take 2 slides to just give you a glimpse into the general guidelines for guide RNA design, guide RNA or gRNA design. So the first thing before you begin to design a guide RNA, the following must be defined. Firstly, the target region or the gene of interest should be clearly defined. You should know exactly what region of the genome you are going to target. You cannot have a non clear idea of this. You have to be absolutely clear, and no vagueness is allowed in this. What should be the target region when you're designing a guide RNA? Then the version of Cas9 protein which is going to be used, which includes the PAM sequence, is recognized or not. So this should also be already known, because depending on the version of Cas protein, you can find out exactly which guide RNAs would be suitable or not. Fine. So the target region, the Cas version, and then what promoter will be used for in vitro or in vivo expression of the guide RNA. Now, this guide RNA, once you have designed it, you're going to have to clone this inside a vector so as to, deliver it inside the cell. So it is very important for you to know which promoter element are you going to use in that vector, because you want to avoid any kind of, any kind of those sites which hamper the production of this guide. Like you want to avoid any kind of terminator sequences for the promoter to be excluded from the guide RNA sequence. And finally, the cloning strategy should also be known, so that you can find out that which might put additional constraints in the guide RNA sequence design and will impact the design of the specific oligonucleotides to be synthesized and either used as a template for RNA production or cloned into an expression vector. So the cloning strategy should also be clear. Then there are some other guidelines as to the size, etc. So target a specific gene-specific region, target a common exon, few or no off-target effects, and consider frame shift likelihood, filter with predicted efficiency score. All these we will see. Then target a region 500 to 50 base pair upstream of the TSS when you want to do something like CRISPR-A. So also depending on the approach which you are going to use your CRISPR technology for, there are certain steps which you can easily find. And I've given you the hyperlink for this publication whereby you can find these guidelines for low throughput guide RNA design. So these should be kept in mind before you go ahead with any kind of guide RNA design activity for your experiments. Then some of the general guidelines for guide RNA design is, first of all, the GC content of the sequence. The sequence is usually 20 base pair long. So it could range from, I am talking about the second point first. The length could be adjusted and the range can be anywhere from 17 to 20 base pair, 24 base pairs, with shorter sequences leading to minimized off-target effects. Ideal is 20 base pair. Then looking at the GC content, the typical range is between 40 to 80% GC content, where a higher GC content stabilizes the RNA DNA duplex while destabilizing off-target hybridization. So very important. And finally, potential off-target sites of the designed guide RNA should be avoided, or low off-target activity is preferred. So for this, there are certain steps like position of mismatch, number of mismatches, sequence of guide RNA, concentration transfected, et al. These are all dependent on your experiment, and these are all dependent on your target region of interest. Okay, so it is also important to understand what are on-target versus off-target effects. CRISPR-Cas9 can be very efficient. As much as 100% mutagenesis can be seen in some applications. But along with on-target mutagenesis, there can be some off-target mutations elsewhere in the genome. That means off-target means which are not desired, which are not planned, which are not originally understood. So off-target activities can also be seen which are not as per your experiment. So to avoid these off-target activities, you should take some steps. Off-target effects thought to be most likely to happen at sites where sequence similarity to on-target site is there, which is very obvious. Wherever there is similarity to the sequence of the on-target site, if there are multiple such sites in the genome, there will be off-target effects also. So you should try and choose an exclusive region where minimum kind of off-target activity may be possible. Now let's look at some of the tools for guide RNA design. For a good hands-on learning experience, please ensure that your internet connection is steady and also have a paper and pen handy. Okay, so here in the yellow colored highlighted region, I have given you the link of the website. So I can post this, I can post this one in your so what I can do is I can give you this thing in your chat box also.
The Q&A box.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would request all of you to just open this link, go to this link, idtdna.com, and follow the steps like I tell you. For your ease, what I will do is I will open one tab and I will also do idtdna. Okay. Okay. So first I go to IDT DNA, then I go to products and services. Then I go to CRISPR-Cas9. Okay. Genome editing with CRISPR-Cas9. Then I go to guide RNAs. Then I go to check your own design. Okay. Please let me know if you're able to follow. Check your own design. Design my guide RNA. Okay. Now, I go to the third tab here, CRISPR-Cas9 gRNA check. Oh, second, I go to the second tab, which is design custom guide RNA. Design custom guide RNA. There I enter the species that I'm looking for and the input format, whether it is FASTA format or something else. I let it stay FASTA format by default. And then here I start writing the name of my sequence. Let's say I write test 1. And then from the next line, I start typing the target sequence. Mind you, the target sequence should be at least 60 to 70 nucleotides. Okay. If you type very short sequence, it will not be able to generate a sequence. This is just for test. If you have a particular target region of interest known to you already, like a genomic fragment or some kind of genomic loci that you already know, you can easily cut paste that here, or you can upload that as a file. Okay. So just type some sequence that yeah. So I have started typing ATGs.
Can we repeat the steps once?
Yes, I can do that. So, like, I'll show you my slides first. So there, you have to go to this link called IDT DNA. Go to products and services. Choose CRISPR genome editing. Then choose, you scroll down, you go to check your own design. There, you select the second tab, which is design custom guide RNA. Are these 5 steps clear? Theory is I'm doing that along with you. Okay, I have done all these same steps. If you want, I can repeat again. Go to IDT DNA, then select products and services. Then when you open that, go to CRISPR genome editing. The page opens, you have to scroll down. Go to check your own design, written in blue. Then when you click on check your own design, this sort of page will open up. Then you have to select the second tab, which is design custom guide RNA. Okay. If you have not followed up to here, let me know. Otherwise, we will proceed.
I think we can proceed then.
Okay. So I'm doing it along with you to just see. So first I have put the file name, which is test1 I have put. Then I have entered a random sequence by my choice. Okay. Now this sequence should be at least 60 to 70 nucleotides. Okay. At least. Once I have entered the sequence here, this blue box becomes clickable, which is design. So I click on design. It will show processing. Okay. So now when it has finished designing, you can scroll down this page, allow cookies, and you can see this red and white colored grid. I will tell you what it means. Have you all got something like this? Now I will take you back to my slides. Please look at the screen. So I have pasted or typed the target sequence in FASTA format and click design. Results are below. So I get this red.
Full screen.
Sorry, full screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Yeah. So you see this red and white colored grid. So this red color region on the grid, it is basically, in the first glance, the region in which my guide RNAs have been designed, and all the guide RNAs have been ranked in the order of their score. That score is reflected on this grid. If the score lies on this red region, that means those guide RNAs are not good for use. They may not work for me. Whereas the ones in this white region or the second quadrant, only these will work. Now, I can see some boxes have number 1 written there. 1, 1, 1, 1. Oh, okay. Rather, first I'll show you here. So, I have named my test. There it was test 1. Here it is sequence 1. This is the entire sequence of my target region which I have entered. And these small arrows here, 4 arrows, they are the arrows are depicting the guide RNAs. The direction of the arrows shows the orientation of the sequence of the designed guide RNAs, and the location particularly shows the location or the region where the guide RNA is going to target. Now, these are 4, and you see on the grid are also 1, 2, 3, and 4 numbers. So if you look at this grid, on the x-axis, you have on-target potential, starting from low, going to high. And on the y-axis has off-target activities, starting from high to low. Now, my ideal scenario would be I have maximum on-target activity and minimum off-target activity, which happens to be in the second quadrant or the white region of the grid. So I see that these 2 boxes where 1, 1 is written, these are only white, the others are red. So when I mouse over this, so when I go to the next slide, when I mouse over these, I can see the sequences, and this is, wait, it will be more clear when I show you here. Now this is the, this is not from the slide, this is the tab which I have worked on along with you guys. So I have 3 guide RNAs which have been generated in this case, and all 3 are lying in the red region. So that means I have to redesign, or I have to do some changes in my target sequence. When I mouse over any of this number, I will be able to see the score as well as the sequence here. Fine. So the PAM site is also indicated. Position, sequence, and PAM site. Then on target score and off target score. Now what is on target score? I want maximum on target score as well as I want maximum off target score here. Maximum off target score means there is least off target activity. If I click on this I, it shows that a higher value indicates lower off target risk. The score is from 0 to 100. Okay. Now, if I also wanted to have a detail about which off target details are there, or which are the off target sites, I click on this. I also get a list of off target activities. You can see so much of off target activities there. I'm going to avoid this. That is the reason why I have got this, these in the red region. Now, just for your ease, I will go back to my slides, and in my slides, I will show you that I have got at least 2 guide RNAs in the white region of this grid. So when I go to the next slide, I look at those 2 sequences and I look at the on-target score and off-target score. So on-target score, the higher the better is the editing efficiency, and off-target score, higher is the score, reflects lower risk of off-target activity. So in the ideal case, I want high off-target activity, high on-target score and high off-target score. Okay, so here in this case, the combination of highest on-target activity and off-target score is in the first case. So I will choose this one. Okay, this one, or I can choose the second one also. Whereas I will not choose this one, which has got a lower on-target score but higher off-target score. I could have chosen that, but it is better to choose one which has higher on-target score first. Okay, when I go to the next slide, wait. So this is how I have chosen my on-target score, off-target score combination, and I have chosen 2 of the sequences. Is that clear to everyone? Have you tried an example? Anybody would like to share any kind of queries here?
So actually, one of the participants is not able to access the editing tool. So maybe there's a network issue or something else. I'm not sure why that participant is not able to. If you want, Mahati, I can unmute you so that you can talk to the speaker. And Ria will be sending you the recording also. So if you miss something, you can go through the recording again. So I have one question: that is it possible to get more value than 90 for both scores? I'm not able to.
Yes.
Yeah.
In concept, yes, it is possible, because that will mean that that particular guide RNA which has been designed has maximum on-target activity and very less off-target activity. That is how both the scores are so high. It is possible.
If there are no more questions, we can continue with the answer.
Okay. So now, some of the common design or ordering mistakes which lead to failure of experiment. Now, this is also very important, guys. It's not just enough to design the right sequence. It is also important when you order these, you do not make any mistakes. So when oftentimes what people do is they include the PAM site along with the guide RNA sequence at the time of ordering the oligos. Do not do that. You should order the guide RNA as the sequence as that has come from this study or from this tool. Whatever sequence you get, you should order it as it is. You do not need to do any further manipulation, or that is including the PAM site or doing a reverse complement or reverse the target, or you also do not have to order this as an RNA. You have to order this as, although this is guide RNA sequence, but this is very much a DNA sequence, because if you remember, you are going to have to clone this sequence inside a vector. So for cloning, you need a DNA sequence, not an RNA. Okay. It will itself convert to the RNA once it goes inside the cell. So you have to order this as DNA only. So that is one tool. Now coming to the second tool, which is called as ChopChop. Now I will sending you the link for this one. This is also a very nice one. Now, yeah, so this tool, which is called as ChopChop, has been also developed by one of the great scientists involved in in CRISPR-Cas9 studies, and this also helps you to design guide RNAs based on the type of use or the type of approach that you're going to use it for. So in this tool, what is different is that you enter the target sequence. So you can enter the target gene name also, or you can give the loci, that is the RefSeq ID or something like that, or you can type in the sequence also, or you can give the genomic coordinates. You can give in the the species or the version of the genome that is that you would like to use, and you can also enter the approach for which you're going to use it for, whether you're going to use CRISPR-Cas9 or which Cas variant you want to use. So out of a drop down menu, you can select the one which you want to use, and then the final thing, whether you want to use it for knockout, knock-in, indel, anything, all those can also be chosen out of the drop down menu. And once you have done this, you hit on find target sites. So this is how the whole page is going to look like. You go to, I have chosen to work on the Cas9, which is the default one. Choose the second, what should I say this? So go to the second tab here, Cas9, and I have not changed anything. Everything is default parameters here. You can change the length of the guide RNA, whether it is you want 17 nucleotides, 18 or 20. I have left it 20, which is by default. And the PAM site also you can choose here. So PAM site you can choose with reference to the Cas variant that you're going to use. Fine. So this functionality is allowed here. It was not allowed in IDT. Okay. Now, then method for determining off-targets in this genome. Right. Off targets with up to 3 mismatches in protospacer. That means you can select how stringent your off-target activity should be or not. So I have left everything as default parameters here. I have not changed anything. And finally, for the standard backbone, and then I hit find target sites. It is going to give me, I have pasted the sequence in FASTA format and click find target sites. And that's how it would give me all the sequences. I have not done a tutorial of this one. I've not found out the, this thing just to save time, because I wanted to show you more tools, which is more important. And the next tool that we are going to study is this one, which is ecrisp.com. Now here, what you can do is check out our new, so here you have this is from the German group, and here what you can do is there is a preset library of guide RNAs, which is already there. You can select your guide RNAs from there, or you can do your own design. So this is also very simple. This is possible for humans or for other species as well. You put the gene symbol or you put the FASTA sequence. You can select anyone and then start the application and just simply do start guide RNA search. Similarly, there is another tool which is called as GPP Web Portal. This is from the Broad Institute, Zhang Feng's group. So now one thing which is very nice in this is you can select the CRISPR enzyme here, S-pyogenase Cas9, and you can also choose what kind of function you want to do. CRISPR-Ko means knockout. CRISPR-A means CRISPR activation, whereby you will be using a dCas9, or CRISPR-I, which is CRISPR inhibitor, which is for which also you will use dCas9. So you can choose all these things, enter your sequence here and pick quota. That means it will choose the best 5 guide RNAs and show you. Fine. So this is additional tool. So you can find all these links, etc. in the recording that you will get, Broad Institute. Then for pre-designed libraries, there is another one which is called as Synthigo. I want to share with you Synthigo particularly because this has pre-designed CRISPR, guide RNAs already designed in it, and there's a whole library that you can choose from depending on your application. You do a launch, and this is what the page looks like. You can choose the genome which you want to use, then choose the gene name. Now, since this is a library, this is going to be somewhat, this is because it is a pre-designed library, this is going to be somewhat narrowed down, and few of the curated genes which are already known, only their guide RNAs would be there. If there is a non-curated or a non-coding kind of a region of the genome that you're looking to target, that may not be possible here. So you put the gene name here, then you select the nuclease, so which is SP-Cas9. SP-Cas9 is nothing but Streptococcus pyogenes Cas9, which is same as Cas9, and you do a search. So while it is searching, it will locate for BRCA1 in humans, Homo sapiens, chooses the primary sequence, selects the early coding region, identifies potential targets, computing of off-target effects, and calculating some score. Now, this is how you will get the output. As you can see, the BRCA1 gene is highlighted on top. Then the plus strand and minus strand are shown. The sequence of the exon. Which exon is it? It is exon 6, which is how long? 130 base pair. Then the orientation is shown in green as to what orientation your designed guide RNA has got. So you see all the orientation, and this 43,104, these are the genomic coordinates of this sequence. Then you see the sequence of your guide RNA. Then you see the common exon, high activity, and all these things. And this is how you can continue with these 4 guides. Mind you, here, slight variation. You see GGUUU CU. You see uridines. Oh, sorry. Uracils here. Uracil means this is a RNA sequence different from IDT. IDT was designing your guide RNAs in the form of a DNA. Here you are getting guide RNA sequence. So before you order, you have to again convert them into the DNA sequence. Right. So this one. Then this one, which is from, I really like this tool. This, I will give you the link. Now, this is called as this is another tool which is from this Sanjana lab. This is for designing guide RNAs. This has got something unique in it, which I will show you just now. So what you can do is you go to this link. This is the home page. You enter the target genome as to whether it is human or mouse or Drosophila, whatever, and then enter the gene or drag and drop a list. Like you can also, put the genomic sequence here. Then library size. Library size refers to the size of the library of guide RNAs that you want. How many guide RNAs do you want to synthesize? So I've kept it 8 here, 8 guides per gene. Then I've not changed any of the default options. Target protein domains, use expression data to pick exons, and average data from all tissues. And then the step 2. Optional is you can put your email address. Instead of having things only on your screen and then maybe because of some reason you happen to not copy it down in time or something, you can have the output sent to your email directly. You can just have the results on your email. Then when you have put your data there, this is how the page will look like. 1, it was sending data to your email address. Second, you have another option here whereby you can export this library as a CSV or a Excel file. You can have all these sequences down in your Excel and choose them to show to your boss or to select it later on. You can do this. Then what is important, another thing which is important here is, you see this is the gene and these are the different exons of that one. So what it is showing you here as 0, 0, 0, it is showing that 8 guides in library targeting 3 of 26 exons. So these are 26 boxes. So all your 26 exons have been used to design guide RNAs as per your requirement. And only 3 of these 26 exons have been targeted. That is 1 here, 3 here, and 4 here. That means there is one guide RNA which is targeting this particular exon. There are 3 guide RNAs targeting this exon, which is, I think, 24. And the 25th exon is being targeted by 4 guide RNAs. And when you click here, you will be able to see the sequences which are listed here along with the PAM site, the on-target efficiency, and off-target activity, etc. All of these. Now, you will also ask me, what are these colored bars here? So these colored bars are nothing but tissue-specific activity. That means if I'm having greatest green colored activity in exon number 26, that means in the next slide, I'll show you that green color refers to brain. So that means in the brain tissue of humans, this exon, 26th exon, is most active or it is highly transcribed. But if I wanted to target, I mean, if my tissue is coming from, the heart, and I wanted to generate some kind of guide RNAs targeting that tissue, I will look for guide RNAs targeting the exon in which maximum activity from the heart is shown. Fine. So similarly, this is color coded information. This is very efficient. I mean, this is one of the best tools if you wanted to do tissue specific activity. Fine. So this is how I get all this, and all this again I can also export in the form of a library. Efficiency scores are computed using the techniques described by, in fact, they've also mentioned the paper or the back reference from where they have mentioned the calculation technique for efficiency score. This is how I get all of these. Now, if you have a preferred genomic coordinates of the target, that means sometimes you will have a gene sequence for which the gene name or gene is not curated. You only have genomic targets, or it is a non-coding region, which is something new that you have come across, or a new organism you have come across, and there is a sequence which is not curated well. You only have genomic coordinates. So what you can do is you can only put the genomic coordinates, target regions here, and you select the organism name. And that's how you can generate the sequence of the guide RNAs along with the PAM site and the on-target and off-target score. So this is how you can do. This tool is benchling.com for CRISPR. Okay. So these are almost 5-6 tools that I've shown you today. There are other tools also like Cas-Off Finder, CRISPR, DeskGen, Horizon Discovery, and there are some more new tools which are being developed. But I have tried to show you a variety of tools whereby every tool has got something unique to it. So depending on your application, depending on your requirements for your experiment, you can choose which tool to go to for your guide RNA design. So with that, I am coming to the end of my slides. Let us have some discussion and let me know if all of you have been able to, use at least one of this tool, and which tool do you like best.
So thank you so much, Dr. Tani, for this wonderful hands-on. So we have one question. So one of our participants is asking that which is the best online tool for gRNA design?
Okay.
And is there any difference in terms of protocol for gRNA design in knockout, activator, and inhibitor?
Okay. So, dear, like I've told you that all these tools have got something different, something unique to each of the tools, and depends on your requirements. I think the most user-friendly till date, which I found, is IDT-DNA, which is most user-friendly. You can use it for different, steps. You use it for different requirements. So I think that is the best tool. Otherwise, depending on your requirement, you could also go for any of the tools where there are pre-designed libraries. So if you have a pre-designed library, so that means they have already taken care of some of the parameters about off-target activity and all that. They will not be there. So even that can be used at times. Yeah. Any more questions?
Yes, we do have. So how they are implementing CRISPR in diagnosis? Is that off-target also applicable here? So the participant saying that she have seen some CRISPR kit commercially available. How they achieved it?
Yeah, so there is some CRISPR kit which is commercially available, and in fact, for SARS-CoV-2, there was this CRISPR kit available from IGIV itself. It has reached the markets. So those are basically qualitative tests. They are not quantitative tests. You can guess whether the infective material is there in the sample or not. So they are using the specific guide RNAs against the target of your infective agent, the pathogen. So they are there, and there is no off-target activity because already they are very well optimized for diagnostic purpose. So please mind you that all these off-target activities, etc., these are for we have to keep in mind because we are doing exploratory studies. But something which is developed as a diagnostic kit or something, that means it has already gone through all these steps of elimination of off-target activities. It is only when everything has been optimized, it is packaged into a marketable good and it is available in the markets. Yeah.
So the next question is how CRISPR-Cas9 technology can be utilized for cancer treatment.
How CRISPR can be used for cancer treatment? Yeah, it is very simple. So if you think that in concept, if there is a tumor causing gene that is there in the body and you wanted to interfere with that gene and you wanted to render it inactive, what you could do is you could target it through CRISPR-Cas9 and you could render that inactive by producing a double strand break somewhere in the coding region of that cancer causing gene. So that is how, as simple as that, it could be done for any, whether it is a cancer gene or it is an HIV gene or any gene which you don't want particularly. You don't want a particular gene in your body, you want to render it non-functional. You could do it by producing a double strand break by using CRISPR-Cas technology. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So there are no more questions at the moment. So participants, if you have any more questions, you can write them in the chat box, or you can also raise your virtual hands. You can directly speak to the speaker. And because now we are coming towards the end of the session, so you can have your question either from the lecture or from hands-on. Feel free to ask any of the questions. If you missed out some part, or if you want to go through that part again, the hands-on, just let us know. We'll do that as well.
Yeah, please, if you want a particular part to be shown you again, just let us know.
Okay, so what is the difference between TALENs and CRISPR-Cas9?
TALENs and CRISPR-Cas9. CRISPR-Cas9 is basically based on the CRISPRs, which is clustered regularly interspaced palindromic RNAs, and TALENs are different kind of enzymes. I mean, they are big mega nucleases or big enzymes which are capable of generating cuts in the genome at specific sites. So the technology behind TALENs and CRISPR is absolutely different, and I think it is difficult for me to tell you in this particular session because it is beyond the scope. If you're interested, you can just list as you can just register as one of the participants for our course on genome editing tools, where we go through TALENs and ZFNs, etc., in big detail.
And because we regularly keep conducting such courses, or we can also organize another event on the other genome editing tools as well. So we have another question from Yogini. She's asking that do we need to register for CRISPR-Cas9 editing?
I'm sorry, I don't understand your question. Where do you need to register? I have shown you through the tools, and there was no requirement for registering for any of those. Did you have to register?
Yogini, can you explain that? She's asking at IDT.
I think yes. Yeah. Nowadays they have changed their website design, and you just need to provide them your email address just to that is not for that registration is not for designing CRISPR-Cas9 particularly. That is when you want to use their site for any particular design, any kind of design, whether it is primer design or anything, they want you to register. So that is something the site is asking. You can do it. It is harmless. I have also registered myself back in the day, so that's not a problem.
Okay, so and then another question is for target sequences, should we enter our own sequence on IDDNA?
Yes, for target sequences, basically you have to enter. You have to tell the portal that what is your target sequence. So for that, either you can type the sequence or you can copy paste from a FASTA file, or sometimes you can also upload a text file. Right. So all these three different modalities are available when you want to tell the portal that this is your target sequence, out of which they can design the guide RNA for you.
Yeah, and those sequences are FASTA sequences, right?
Yes.
So these are all the questions. So if you have any more questions, you can share here now, or we'll bring the session to the end. So I don't see that there are any more questions. Okay, so there's a question from Priyanth. He's saying that he is working on CRISPR kit which developed by Tata MD using Cas9. You are saying that's off target. Very well understood that.
I don't understand your question. Can you explain more? So as I understand that you are not, you are talking about the CRISPR-Cas9 kit which is being developed by Tata Molecular Diagnostics, and I just said that off-target effects have been already nullified or optimized in that kit for the use of for clinical use, and that is, see, off-target effects will always be there, but the only way it is going to be done is when you can minimize the off-target effects. And once the off-target effects have been minimized as per the inventor, only then it is made available for diagnostic or clinical use. So that is what I'm saying, that off-target effects are not completely removed all the time. They can be minimized. Yeah. And only when a certain benchmark of off-target effects has been reached, that minimum off-target effects have been nullified, only when that benchmark has been reached, then only it is approved for clinical use. So whenever there is a kit which comes out in the market, that means it has already gone through those eliminating steps whereby off-target effects are minimized.
Okay, so basically he's asking that we are getting false positive, and how will that be possible?
False positives can come from many different reasons. That once, if your sample is contaminated, if you're, if you've not executed your experiment properly, there can be many reasons. I think we can understand this. If you have more direct questions, we can discuss that separately. But see, false positives is not just possible in CRISPR-Cas9; it is possible in every other molecular biology technique. So false positives can always be there, but then there are ways and means to control that. If your sample is contaminated, if your experiment has not followed the right protocol, then also false positives can come. So, and sometimes, yes, some off-target effects can also cause false positives, to answer your question. So that can also happen, but then it depends on the inventor, the inventing scientist, to be able to minimize those in order for the kit to become marketable.
So now we are taking the last question for the day. The question is how to optimize a target if the person has only have low GC content.
How to optimize the target if I only have low GC content. See, yeah, those are technical aspects for which a lot of technical expertise may be required. And for that, I think although low GC content is not preferred. However, if you have even 20-30% GC content, even then it may be possible to generate some kind of some unique guide RNAs, because as you have seen in my presentation, the allowed limit is from 20 to 80%. The higher it is, the better and easier it is. However, even with the lower GC content, it is still possible. It may be a little bit more trickier to design a more specific guide RNA, but then it is possible.
Okay, that was brilliantly answered, Tani, and I'm sure that all the participants have not just benefited from the wonderful webinar or the wonderful workshop and the hands-on, but also they have discussed so many questions, and I'm sure that if they are going to practice using the recordings that we are going to send, and if participants, if you face any issues or if you have any more questions, feel free to write it to us. We may compile all the questions and send it to the speaker, and maybe we can organize a next workshop which you can attend as well, and you can take on more that we can organize an advanced workshop for that. And if you want any other event to be organized, just write it down as a feedback. So after this workshop, a feedback mail will be circulated to you, wherein you can write in if you would like to have any other event or course, or if you have any data analysis requirements, feel free to share that with us. So with that note, I would like to say thank you so much to our speaker for her wonderful insights, and so many insights that she has given into genome editing, this particular field, which is not just new but also very much exciting, and many students will benefit from understanding the basic concepts. So thank you so much, Dr. Tani, and thank you all the participants for attending our workshop. We'll be very happy to see you back again.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Diksha, and all the best to your team. And thank you so much, dear participants. It was nice interacting with you. If you have any questions, please let Dr. Diksha know, and she will get back to me with all the questions list, and we can always answer those for you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And please follow us on our social media pages, because we are going to have a new name very soon. So we'll be known with a new identity. We'll have a new identity very soon. So please follow us on social media to be updated with the latest news. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.